Hello everyone, this is John Galt speaking, here with another tutorial video where we're going to talk about the using of the product that I have submitted to the UE4 marketplace called Multiplayer FPS Basic. So there's already one video that exists, which is basically called part 1. This is going to be part 2, where we're going to focus specifically on the switching of the character and the switching of the weapon models, and also some of the particle effects and sound effects that are for the weapon. So let's get this party started here. So on the UE4 marketplace, guys, there is a secret section of free assets. So I don't know why this is this way, but you guys know that they do the free for the month content. Then they have a permanently free collection. Well, when I'm looking through the permanently free collection, I don't see some of these assets that are free. I don't see them listed in here. So to get to the secret section of the free forum marketplace content, don't click any of these categories and instead just click where it says free. And when you do that, this will show all that secret stuff that don't show otherwise. So if you sort by the oldest first after you do that, you're going to see that there is some characters: military character silver, military character dark, military weapons silver, military weapons dark, and there's quite a few other things as well, some sci-fi weaponry and stuff like that. But I can't never find that or get that to show up any other way than actually just clicking where it says free. None of the categories, click free, and then sort by oldest first, and this is where you'll find some of this free stuff. So what I have done is, basically, I have gotten the military character silver and the weapons, and I have already added them to this project so that we can use these as a demonstration since they're free, right? It don't cost anything. So the very first thing that I want to mention to you guys here is that the characters that you guys choose to do this process to, I am not going to be covering the retargeting process. So then that means all the characters that you guys are going to be using, which you don't have to, if you guys want to do the whole retargeting process, you can do that. I'm just not going to be covering that because I believe that's something that is completely unnecessary, because there's no reason that the characters that you're using could not and should be on a default UE4 skeleton. And it should conform to that skeleton. If it's a humanoid character, there's no reason not to do that. Now, I know that you guys can get free Mixamo characters. There's Daz characters. There's content creator characters. There's all these different type characters that you guys have access to. But the problem with those is that they're not compliant with the default UE4 skeleton hierarchy, which then complicates things significantly with the maintenance of your projects, meaning you have to maintain 2, 3, 4, 5 different animation blueprints. You have to maintain 2, 3, 4, 5 different sets of animations, and so on and so forth. Physics assets as well. So this video is with the caveat that your characters will only work through this process that I'm going to demonstrate here if it is rigged and skinned to a default UE4 skeleton hierarchy. They don't have to be the exact same size as the mannequin, but the way the skeleton is arranged, the names of the bones, the way that they're parented in the hierarchy of the skeleton does need to match the same one that the UE4 mannequin uses. So with that being the case, we also need to only have to have one skeleton asset and one physics asset in this particular demonstration here. So if we go into the multiplayer FPS basic template folder, and we go underneath the characters folder, and we look in this UE4 meshes folder, you guys are going to see what this project is set up with and what it consists of. So we have a physics asset, which is the default physics asset that comes with the default UE4 mannequin, pre-set up, right? This is not something that I made. This is just the default physics asset. Really? It's going to do that? Really? Let me open this up here. Are we really going to have this issue? Oh, wow. Well, I don't know why this is having a cow, but anyway, we have one physics asset in here, and that's the one that comes default from Epic, right? That's not something that I built for this project. We also have the full body mesh of the mannequin, and we also have a set of arms only, and we also have a lower torso mesh. And all three of these skeletal mesh assets are using this skeleton, the default UE4 skeleton, and they're also using this default UE4 physics asset. So in order to change this character out, we're going to have to make sure that the meshes that we have are replacements of these. Okay? So essentially what that means is that in this military character silver asset pack that's free on the marketplace, you can see that there are two different versions of this character, and there's also a skeleton and a physics asset. So we do not need this skeleton, nor do we need this physics asset. And the reason that we don't need this is because this is actually a default UE4 mannequin skeleton. These characters are skinned and rigged to a default UE4 skeleton. There's no reason to have multiple skeletons in this project. So all these bones and this hierarchy over here is exactly the same as the one that's found in the default mannequin. So what I'm going to do is, since we don't need that, we're going to select the skeleton and the physics asset, right click, and we're simply going to delete both of them. It's going to kind of have a little bit of a cow here saying that, hey, it's referencing stuff. Force delete anyway. Okay, and then we're going to take these two assets, these two skeletal mesh assets, right click, and we're going to go to skeleton, and we're going to select assign skeleton. And this will be the default UE4 mannequin skeleton that comes in this template. And so we will select that here. And then we will also have to do this for the second skeletal mesh. And then we need to assign the default physics asset that also comes in this project, which will be, this time we're going to go to asset actions, bulk edit via property matrix. You can do this two different ways, right? So let's just do them individually. You open up the skeletal asset, the skeletal mesh, and there is a section here that says physics. Right here, you just simply apply the physics asset for the default mannequin that's in this project. And then you hit save. And then the same is also true for this one, which somehow or another, this character is stupidly foobarred here. So this might be something with the marketplace, right? So I don't know why this is doing this. This is something that's not got anything to do with this project. This is a actual... well, the moment I applied that physics asset, you can see that it corrected this character somehow. It's magic. Right, so now we have these two characters, and they are using the default UE4 mannequin skeleton that comes in here, and the default physics asset that comes in this project, which is exactly the same skeleton and physics asset that comes in with any project from Epic Games that has a default mannequin in it. Third person template, animation starter pack character, anywhere. So now that we've done that, what we now have the ability to do is go into the multiplayer FPS folder, the project folder, and we can go underneath the blueprints. We can open up this BP character master blueprint, and remember that this consists of 3 separate meshes, right? So the only one we really have is the full body mesh, right? So we can select the mesh here for the full body, and we can change this over to be that character, which was called, what was it called? Well, it could be either one of these. It could be the style 1 female or the style 1 male, and we simply plug it in. Okay. Now, we're not really going to worry about this color yet. See, you guys can see here that this character is not using his textures. And there's a reason for that. And this is something that Epic Games makes us do as content creators. So for now, we're not going to worry about that, but we will fix it. It's more important at this point to get the meshes that we need. So by doing that simple change that we just did there, now when we spawn in here, we don't see that character anywhere. You guys see that character? I don't see that character, but look at his shadow, right? So do you guys see that the shadow is now of that new character? But we don't see it. Now, why is this? Well, the reason is because we still need an arms only mesh and we still need a torso mesh. But at this point, everyone that's looking at us is actually going to be seeing this new character that we put in this project. Problem is, we can't see it, right? So there's a couple ways that you can achieve the lower torso of this character, mesh only, but we're going to actually do this the quote-unquote legit way and not a hacky way. So we could get the lower torso by not having to use a external program, by using a node built in this engine called hide bone by name. And essentially what you could do is on event begin play, for example, you could use the node called hide bone by name, select the third person mesh of the character that you would put in the slot, right? So here's what I'm talking about. So for the torso here, you could put in the exact same mesh that you're using for this one. The problem is this one, we only need it to be from the pelvis down. We don't need the upper body. So by using that hide bone by name, you can set it to hide bone by name from spine 01, and it will make the upper body of this character be completely invisible. And only the lower torso would show, but that is still no solution for how we're going to get the arms only to be visible. So I just wanted to describe a method that you could use in order to do this lower torso. But in this case, we're actually going to do it the legit way, which actually will require a 3D application. Doesn't really matter which one, right? You could do this with Blender. You could do this with Maya. You could probably do this with 3D Studio Max. So we're going to be using Maya because that's my 3D application of choice. So that is the program we're going to use. So what we need to do is take this character. We're only going to do one of these, right? But the process would be exactly the same for either one of these characters. So we're going to right click this character and we're going to say asset actions and we're going to go to export. And I'm going to put that on the desktop of my computer. Okay. Then we're going to open Maya and we're going to go in here and I'm going to show you guys how to make, if you will, make these meshes that we require, which would be the lower torso and the arms only. And actually this is not hard, believe it or not. Just a little weird, but it's definitely not hard to do this. We're not going to have to do any modeling or any of that stuff, so don't panic. So we're going to come over here to File, and we're going to say Import, and from the desktop, we're going to bring in that mesh of that character. Now, when you export a character out of the Unreal Engine, it groups the skeleton and the geometry together in a group. Problem is, when you try to export your character back out of your 3D application to bring back into the Unreal Engine, it has a cow if those are in that group, because for some reason it says that it has multiple roots found and that there's duplicate bone names. So the process that I use to eliminate that error is we go to Windows and we go to the outliner, which shows you everything that's in your scene. And this is the group that I'm talking about. So what I do is select the geometry of the character, hold down the left shift button and hit the P key. And that will unparent that. Then we select the root, which is the entire skeleton hierarchy, hold down left shift and hit P. And that unparents that. Then we simply take this top node here and delete it, right? And that's literally all you got to do. So since I did that, I'm going to go ahead and say File, Export All, and I'm going to export that right back over top of the same file that I imported. That way, if I bugger this up, we don't have to do that little process over again. So what we're going to do first is we're going to select the skeleton here, and we're going to come over here to Layers, and we're going to say Create Layer from Selected. The whole point of that is so that we can toggle on and off the visibility of this skeleton. So at this point, it's up to you which mesh you make first, right? So we need 2 different meshes. So I'm going to select this character, right mouse click, and I'm going to go to UV and UV shell. Now, when I do that, you'll notice that as I point to this character, it's picking specifically the UV shells of this character. So we're going to make the arms mesh first. So essentially what I'm going to do is select the lower body of this character like that and just delete it. And then to be a little bit more precise as to what I'm deleting, I'm going to do that UV shell thing, right? So make sure you're in UV shell, and we're going to pick these and just pick one and delete it. And then pick one and delete it and see what we have left, right? And the goal here is to just delete everything except for the arms, right? So you will delete the head of this character, that little piece, that little piece. And honestly, it's a little bit hit or miss here, depending on how your character is built, how it's modeled, as to exactly what you need to get rid of. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this and also this. This and that looks like about that, and we will delete this. We're going to delete this little antenna, and let's just kind of have a look at what we have left here. So I believe I'm going to be okay with that. Actually, I see some pieces floating around here. Do you guys see that? I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those too. So this is the arms mesh. Now, when we toggle back on the visibility, you're going to see that the entire rest of this skeleton is still here. That's exactly how it's supposed to be. Don't delete anything other than just the geometry that you want removed. Don't come in here deleting leg bones and all that stuff. It's going to foobar everything if you do that. Okay? So now that we've did that, we're going to select the geometry, point to it, right click and go back to object mode. Select the object, which will be both these arms, and we're going to run this little process over here called modify, delete by type, and we're going to choose to delete the non-deformer history. Don't delete the history, only the non-deformer history. You delete the history and you just hosed all the skin weights, right? Don't do that. And now with that process complete, we will say File, Export All, and we're going to, just to find it easy, I'm just going to call this Arms. Yeah, did I spell that right? Arms. Yep, and we're just going to export it as Arms. Okay. Now we need the lower torso, right? So we're going to do File, New Scene. Don't save because we already exported it. And then we're going to say File, Import, and we're going to import the full character again. And this time around, we're going to do exactly the same thing, except this time we're going to delete everything but the lower torso of this character. So back to create layer from selected, hide it. And you can do the whole UV shell thing if you want. Or alternately, you can just say, okay, we're going to cut this sucker about right there and delete it, right? And you might want to clean this up. You might want to be a little bit more precise than I am when I did this. But that's essentially what you do, is you just need the lower torso of this character. And with that, we're going to go back to object mode, select the geometry, and we're going to do the whole edit, delete by type, non-deformer history. Again, every time you delete geometry off this, you have to do delete the non-deformer history. Otherwise, it will give you an error when you try to export it. So now we're going to export this, and this is just going to be called torso, and we're going to export it onto the desktop. Now, all we got to do, guys, I know this seems extremely complicated, but really it's not. Now all we got to do is come back in here, and we're going to say into where our characters are, right? So this is in here. We're going to say import from the desktop. We're going to import the arms and the lower torso. On import, it's going to ask you what skeleton should these use. We already know that we're going to be using the default UE4 skeleton, the only default UE4 skeleton that we have in this project, which would be this. We also don't need any materials nor textures because we didn't export any, right? They're already in this project. And then all we have to do is hit the import all button, and magically, as if almost by magic, now we have a lower torso. It already applied the material that it needs to use. And we also have the arms only, which already applied the material that it needs to use. So now all we have to do is go back into the FPS basic template, into the characters folder, into the blueprints, and we open back up our character master blueprint. And now we need to replace these arms with these arms. See them change here. And we need to replace this torso with this torso, and you see it change here. And we compile that and save it. And now when we spawn in here, we actually have the correct arms, right, from that new character that we just did. And we have the correct lower torso. And also, by the way, that skin weight, that's something that come from the marketplace that way. We didn't do that. We could fix that, but I'm not going to go in here and fix these shoddy marketplace assets, right? That's something that they should have did. But that is a skin weight issue, and I'm not fixing that, right? That should be the content creator's job, not mine. Okay, and so there we go. Now, the only other problem that we have is that we're red. So let's go ahead and go into a 2-player environment here so that we can actually see that this is working correctly. So we're going to set this to 720 by 512. Uncheck always center window. And then we go to 2 players. And we go to new editor windows, and we can move these around a little bit here. Oh yeah, that's exactly not what I meant to do. Put him on red, put him on blue, and I'm going to run over here. Not near the turret because that thing's pretty lethal. And now you can see that he's using that new mesh and not the mannequin anymore. And I see my correct arms and my correct lower torso. And that is all it takes to create the meshes that you need for your character. So, in other words, if you have a third-person character that is on a default UE4 skeleton, all you got to do is cut all the geometry off except for his arms, and then you cut the other geometry off and make a torso mesh, and you simply plug them right in to this animation or to this character blueprint, and everything just as if almost by magic works, right? So let's talk about these colors here, right? Because we want these to actually use the textures that these characters come with and not this. So when you create a team-based product, Epic Games requires you to explicitly display the color of the team you're on. And they require you to do that in several different ways. One of them is that the character's color should be red if he's on red and blue if he's on blue. Same as with the bases, right, of these team starts. Red if you're on red, blue if you're on blue. Same with the lights on these pickups. Red if you're on red, blue if you're on blue. So that causes an issue, right? So the way that I chose to do that was with a dynamic material instance. Okay? And so in the character blueprint, we're going to have to undo some stuff. Unfortunately, we're going to have to undo some stuff. So in the character master blueprint, in the construction script, this is where all that is taking place of creating the dynamic material instance and stuff. So in the construction script, if you just unhook this, theoretically, this might be enough to get it done, right? So if we hit play, and now you can see I have the correct materials on this character here. And if we go to the blue team and I run over here and have a look at him, you can see that we're actually using the right materials now. So let's hit escape and make sure we don't get any errors. And we got some errors. So by unhooking the construction script, you guys can see that we have generated ourselves a shitload of errors. Well, the reason is because now that dynamic material instance doesn't exist anymore. So back in the character blueprint, there is a function in here called onRep local team. If we open this up, you can see that right here is some more to do with the dynamic material instance and the changing of the color. So since we don't have those anymore, because those are created in the construction script, we simply need to unhook this here and jump over top of this and go straight into this without actually doing this. You guys can delete that if you want to, but I'm going to unhook it for this demonstration here. So now when we spawn in here, it should be exactly the same. We got the correct materials and all that. The difference is now when we hit escape, it shouldn't give us that big fat huge error anymore. Okay, so we will hit escape and pray. Bam, no errors. So there you go. That's how you undo what Epic Games makes us do, right? So now you have the character being colored the way that it should be. Properly, what you should be doing here is creating your characters in such a way that you can display a color in parts of their clothing, for example, like make their shirts red if they're on the red team, blue if they're on the blue. There's lots of clever ways to display how your team is represented. In this instance, I simply did a color swap. Okay. All right. So there you go. That pretty much covers the character. Once again, sorry for you Mixamo guys. You guys can go do all the retargeting and all that stuff that you want, but we're not covering that in this video. I don't use retargeting myself, and I don't advocate using it because honestly, there's no reason to. I understand you're getting free characters. They don't cost anything, but that does come at a cost at the end of the day, which is your compatibility is crap if you're using 14 different skeletons, right? I understand if you're using a biped or a quadruped, you can't really use the same skeleton for that. But there's no reason that your humanoid characters all can't use the exact same skeleton hierarchy. No reason. Okay, so now with that, now what we're going to do is talk about changing the weapon meshes, right? Because obviously, you guys are not going to be satisfied with the crappy placeholder weaponry that's in here, so you're going to want to change the gun. So to do that, I have also added the other free pack called Military Weapons Silver. And in here, it comes with some various different weaponry, but this is set up for an assault rifle and a launcher. So what we need to do is actually pick out the gun we're going to use. Right now, this is kind of important here. You can see that this gun is facing down the y-axis, okay? So we need to also verify that the placeholder gun that we're using is also facing down the same axis. So in the crap did I even put this stuff? In the blueprints folder, underneath the gameplay, there is a weapons folder, and inside that there is a meshes folder. So you can see that we have a rifle in here. And as you can see here, the rifle is actually pointed down the x-axis. Welcome to conformity, guys. So this is a quick little TLDR here. When you make one gun, and that gun happens to be facing down a specific axis, of putting the gun on the character and putting the weapon in the hand and all that stuff, rotating sockets, for example, if you use a gun that faces in a different direction, you're either going to have to add a new socket to put that weapon in so that you can rotate it to be the correct facing way, or you're going to have to try to make all your weapons conform, meaning all your weapons need to face down the same axis, obviously. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to make, since I built this template with a weapon that is facing down the x-axis, we're simply going to make sure that all those other guns that we're going to use are also going to be facing down the x-axis, right? So to do that, what we're going to do is, this is not complicated either, but it's a step that kind of aggravates me because apparently marketplace content creators can't all get on the same boat and make sure that all their weaponry is facing the same direction, right? So it's okay though, it's all good. So what we're going to do is, in that military weapons silver folder, we are going to take that assault rifle, we're going to right click, and we're going to export this rifle, or are we, right? So why am I not seeing it? Oh, asset actions, export. Wow, it's late, guys. I'm tired. So we're going to export this rifle onto the desktop and just save it. Then we're going to turn right around, as dumb as this may seem, we're going to turn right around. We're going to re-import the assault rifle that we just exported. We're going to say yes to all. And we're going to tell it to use that skeleton, right? Which is the assault rifle A skeleton. Is that it? Yeah, assault rifle A skeleton. I suppose it don't make a difference. Oh, wow. So I've got one in here called assault rifle. No, that's the same one. Right. So whatever. We're just going to pick one. If it blows up, we'll figure out how to fix it. So we know that weapon is facing down the y-axis. So on the import rotation here, we're going to put this to -90 and pray that my dyslexia didn't just cause this to be wrong. So we're going to import it. And now when we open this up, you can see that it is actually facing down the x-axis. So I'm not going to sit here and do every one of these, right? I'm only going to show you guys how to change this. The next thing we need to do is make sure that this gun has a socket on the end of it for the displaying of effects. So if we use the reference, which is provided in this project, aka the gun I put in here, you guys can see that if we open this skeleton, you can see that I have a socket on here just called muzzle. So then that means this assault rifle skeleton also is going to need a socket on the end of the barrel called muzzle. And they've got one here called muzzle flash, but these names have to match. So I'm simply going to rename this socket to simply say muzzle, not muzzle flash. And then we save it, right? I don't know why it didn't rename that, right? But it didn't, so whatever. Surely this will work. So we're just going to leave it called muzzle. Then what we need to do is open up the child blueprint for the assault rifle that's in this project, which would be underneath the weapons blueprints. You can see that we have one here called BPC weapon assault rifle. If we look in the open full blueprint editor, you can see that we have in the viewport, this is where the mesh is, right? And there's two. This is very important. There are two meshes. One is for the first person view. One is for the third person view. It's the exact same gun, right? It's just two different versions of it. So for the first person one, we're going to plug in our new assault rifle A. And we're also going to plug the same exact one in the other one. And now you can see that it actually changed the weapon mesh. And if we spawn in here, this should just almost work by magic, right? And so we do have our weapon in our hand. And oddly enough, all the logic and everything still works. Problem is, it's yellow. Once again, something Epic does. So in the master weapon blueprint, which is this one, we need to go in here and make a mod in the construction script for this as well, which is simply unhook it, right? And now when we spawn in here, it should actually have the correct texture on it, and voila, as if almost by magic, there it is. And the exact same process would be to change this gun, right? So if you guys want to change this gun, it's exactly the same process. Make sure it's facing down the correct axis. Make sure it has a socket on the end of it called muzzle. And in the child weapon launcher, you simply go in here and you replace these meshes with the mesh that you want. If you don't make sure they're facing down the same axis, guys, you're going to be dicking with sockets till the day you die, right? Because all these weapon creators do this differently. They just do. I don't know why. I don't know. They just do. It's a lot easier just to make them conform. If you build a project and you happen to put the weapon on the character with it facing down the Y, make sure every other gun that you have is Y facing. If you make it with it facing X, make sure all the other weapons are facing X. One other final thing to note here about the switching of the mesh of this weapon. These are skeletal meshes, guys. You're not going to be able to come in here and plug in a static mesh weapon, right? They do need to be skeletal meshes, regardless of whether they're animated or they have more than just a single bone. You can't plug a static mesh in here because this is built using weapons that are skeletal meshes, not static. If you want to use static meshes, you can, but you're going to have to go make some modifications to the weapon blueprint to also allow the use of static mesh weapons. And that's not hard to do, but you really should just make things conform, guys. A lot easier in the long run. Believe me. Okay, so I guess the final thing to talk about here really is I said we were going to change some sound effects and some particle effects. So this comes with a placeholder stuff, right? This came out of the shooter template that Epic provides for free. And I also believe that these weapons also, this weapon pack also came with some sound effects and some weapon effects. So if we look in the FX of this, you can see that we do have some stuff, right? So essentially, what we will do here is in the template folder, underneath the blueprints, underneath the gameplay, underneath the weapons blueprints, if we open up that assault rifle child blueprint, in the previous video, I talked about how you could just plug in what you want to use here. This is going to be a fairly good demonstration of that. So I guess the first thing we'll do is change the muzzle flash. right? So I literally have no idea what the names of these are. So I'm just going to do it this way, right? We're going to look in the particles that we have. We're going to pick one, right? So that says P assault rifle muzzle flash. We're going to select it, and then we're going to hit this little arrow button to auto-magically plug it in. And voila, there it is. And now when we spawn in here, we should be sporting a new muzzle flash, which, by the way, seems to only spawn one time and then it doesn't spawn again. Once again, guys, conformity matters. So this muzzle flash is not set to be looping. It fires one time and then it quits. We need this to actually be a looping muzzle flash. So to do that, how the hell do you do that? Is it just like under the required section here? Emitter loops right here. This needs to be 0 to loop infinitely. That also means that this needs to be 0 to loop infinitely. So everything in the required section of this particle here, unfortunately, is going to have to be set to emitter loops 0 so that it will loop infinitely. So essentially you just go through every single one of these required tabs here and make sure that they're all set to 0. And then, as if almost by magic, we now have a looping muzzle flash. And once again, guys, I don't want to sit here and actually have to go through here and fix all their marketplace assets. But I will tell you guys, good luck with that, right? Because a lot of these assets you buy, particularly old ones, right? So these assets here are actually old, right? Like these are years old. They've been on the marketplace and they've likely not had an update in years. But just be aware that, yeah, sometimes shit goes wrong. And a lot of times it ain't necessarily, like, for example, you guys that are new to the engine might assume that this template's broken when you try to change this muzzle flash because it sparks once and then quits. When obviously, that's not the issue. It's actually the asset that we're trying to use. Okay, so I don't know if there's any bullet impacts in here. I don't know. Let's see here. P impact stone, P impact metal, right? So it's basically the same process. You go into the child blueprint of this assault rifle that comes in this template, and you go to, okay, here's the impact effect. So we pick us out a new one, which would be wood, what is this, metal large, metal medium, we'll use that one, metal small, and you just simply plug it in here, and then it should, now you can see it's doing different impact effects, and once again you can just change them, pick out one that you like. You like it. This is also a hit scan weapon, so we don't really have to worry about the tracers that are firing. But you know, you could modify this weapon blueprint that this comes with to include tracers. You could change it over to be a projectile weapon instead of a hit scan. But that's really the purpose of the template buyer. I could have built a whole entire game if I wanted to. But that would have cost you guys a lot more than the price of this template. So it's meant to come with a designated set of features to be learned from and expanded upon. You guys want to change it? Go in here and rip it apart and change it however you wish. And then, of course, guys, the sound effects, it would be the same way, right? So if you open up the assault rifle, you also have the ability to you could change the animations here, right? The different montages. I talked about this in the other video, so I don't really want to sit here and go through every single thing, but basically you need a replacement asset for the one that this comes with. So if you want this to make a different sound when you reload it, you just simply need to make sure that you're picking a different sound that is a sound cue. And then you just simply plug it in right here, and magically it just works. That's the beauty of templates, right? They have a lot of this stuff pre-made for you guys. And so I think maybe we'll try to change the fire weapon sound. So right here, this is an auto fire hit scan weapon. So we need an auto fire looping sound. And I don't know necessarily if this asset pack even comes with that, right? So it does seem to have some sounds in here. So in the rifle, in the cues, let's see what we got. We got ammo pickup, body impact, surface, lower, raise, reload. Where is the fire AQ? So that's a single shot, right? We wouldn't be using that. We are needing a looping sound, right? So that would be that. So we can select that, and then boom, as if almost by magic, it's loaded in here. And now when we shoot this gun, we got this. And of course, an auto fire weapon uses a shot in sound so that it doesn't just end into dead space. So we need to look to see if there's actually a, there it is, right there, rifle fire end cue. So that's the, that trails off into the distance when you get done shooting the gun, which means auto fire shot in sound. We have it selected, we plug it in. And now have and then there's probably impact sounds and all that stuff, but you guys kind of, I think with this, ought to be able to figure the rest of this out. So yes, this template's completely editable. There's nothing about this thing that you can't change. It's just that any template you guys buy is built by a person, and however that person builds it, it's built to conform with whatever assets he chose to use in the building of it. So you've got two choices. Either you can make your future assets you're going to use in said template conform to what the content creator created, or you can change what the content creator created to conform to what assets you wish to use. But it can't be both, right? Because if you don't do that and make your project conform, you're going to get lost in a mess of redoing this to work with that asset, then to only redo it again to work with that asset. You guys get the point, right? So project conformity actually matters, believe it or not. And so with that, guys, I mean, that's really the gist of it. So that's the final video that needed to be made for this. And that's how you could change the character, create the meshes. You could change the weapon meshes. You could change the particle effects they use, the sound effects, and all that stuff. And then, of course, naturally, you can come in here and build on top of this to add a whole heap ton more functionality to it. And that is why this is called FPS Basic. This is a kit to get you started so that you do not have to start from ground zero. And so I appreciate any of you guys that buy this, have already bought it, or buy it in the future. If you guys have any trouble with any of this stuff, you know, I can't answer how do I build my game, bruh, questions using this template. But I can answer questions for you guys. If you find something broken, literally broken, that doesn't function the way that it ought to, please reach out and let me know. I don't plan having any more features added to it. But there might be an advanced version of this that combines all the templates that I have for sale into one and then some. So there might be an advanced version of this at some point that contains capture the flag, team deathmatch, lots of other game modes, leaderboards, right, where you can determine who killed you, his name will pop up, that kind of stuff. But this is enough, I think, to use as a really good foundation to get you started. And if you choose to, there might be an advanced version at some point, but that's some time out. If that does happen, I will just tell you guys, that is going to be some time out. So this is going to be $19.99. That's the planned price for this. You know, and go watch the overview video to see all the features this thing comes with. It's called basic, but by no stretch of the imagination is this really a basic template. It has Steam functionality, hosting games, joining games, resetting match timer, map travel instigated by the host of the game, auto turrets that track and shoot at players, pickups that have 2 different ammo. I mean, there's tons of stuff in here. And I think that this is a really good kit, especially for a really good price, to get you started up and running quickly in your way to making the next bestest first-person shooter game. So with that, you guys take care. This is John Galt, and we will see you guys in another video in another time. Have a good one, fellows.